Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
It's still January 21st.
And they're still impeaching. No, actually, they have
Yeah,
impeached the president. They're
No,
still
they're
trying
still
the president.
They're discussing
Oh, that's right.
amendments
Yeah, so it's.
that the House
So they're-
managers have proposed, and they keep getting
So do we
thrown
consider
down.
this part of the trial or the preliminary?
This is not a trial. This is preliminary to establish
the
the
rules for
of,
the trial proper.
But meanwhile, there's no evidence that's going to be allowed to be presented. So what kind of trial is
Is
it
that
when
what they
there's no
settled on
evidence?
finally? I mean, I knew that was
He says
coming.
evidence can come after. After
Yeah.
what, I don't know what, but
After the trial.
yeah, I mean, McConnell was basically taking his orders from,
Yeah.
they just want, they don't care what he is. They just want him to run again, to win again, and to put all more judges in. And that to
Yeah.
me is the travesty of
I-
this whole administration,
I've,
is that these are lifetime appointments of judges.
I have, ever since the mid-1980s, felt that presidential elections continue to this day to basically come down to the abortion issue. And the thing is that Republicans, evangelicals
that's
or
a good
whatever,
point, yeah.
strongly wanting to just keep tilting things so that they can get
And
their
guns.
person in.
You've got to throw the guns in there, because some
I'll-
of
I'll
those
throw
gun
that.
advocates
I'll-
are not that
I'll
into the
grant you
abortion
that.
issue.
I'll
It's
grant
the
you
gun
that.
issue. I mean,
And so the thing is, it's
Yeah.
those constitutional issues that they're
the Second
focusing
Amendment
on,
and the fact
whether
that
in
they want
fact
to overturn Roe versus
right to
Wade.
privacy
Yeah.
really does apply to abortion cases.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I always felt that the Bill Clinton impeachment
Oh yeah.
was as much about trying to just get him out so that
Oh,
they
for
could.
8 years they tried to get him out. Just like
Yeah.
they wanted Obama out for
And it
for
was
8 years.
so much
and now
of it was
they've got,
about
yeah.
judicial appointments, and not just Supreme Court judicial
Well, I
appointments.
never thought about it in his case, because
Yeah.
you're right. He got who did Elena Kagan? Was that Obama?
Yeah, but
He did Bader.
yes.
And you're right. It
Yeah,
is
and
about. Well, it's not just the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You have to look at the other courts. You're right.
Yeah. So
But those were lifetime appointments, and those people
Yes.
hopefully are still on the bench. 99,
Right.
2000, 20 years.
so
I don't know.
Bill Clinton, I think,
And
was
Obama,
viewed as,
too,
as this
yeah.
tremendous setback to the
Yeah.
the long-term agenda.
But wait a minute, Obama for those last 2 years
Same
did not.
thing,
No,
yeah.
but he did not have control of the
Right, so they-
Senate.
Right. So so as a result,
Yeah, he
any
didn't get as many.
advantage in terms of judicial appointments that Obama would have had to, give a setback to those whose agenda was all about getting those conservative
Yeah.
justices.
Did they vote on all of those, even the federal districts and all that? The states? Does the Supreme?
I think
does
they
the
do.
Senate?
Yeah, they have to do approvals. So
You
they're
don't hear about those.
so there was a
but,
lot of
yeah.
those ones are just sort of held and left vacant and whatever. So
Hmm.
stalling tactics became part of the game plan then as
Well,
well.
What the big stall was the Merrick Garland one. I mean, that
Yes,
was the
so
most
that's the most
important. That was
pathetic one,
outrageous.
yeah.
And you know that if something happens right now, God forbid, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg or any of them, McConnell will just forge ahead and appoint somebody.
Of course, yeah.
And
yeah.
and if those Republicans in that Senate that go along with that, then all hope is lost for this.
One
this
of the things,
country.
I mean,
Really,
I
there's no
can't
democracy.
speak to all the various district judges and
Appointments,
whatever,
yeah.
but there was kind of an interesting twist, which was that there were Supreme Court justices over the centuries
Yeah.
appointed by, let's say,
Oh,
more conservative
but
ones
the
who became
longer they ser-
more liberal,
You know
or
who
vice
I
versa.
think is coming to that?
Yeah.
I think John Roberts. He's been there probably
I
the
think
longest
the-
now. No.
No,
No.
but I think that one of the things I'll give Justice Roberts for, and it's not
Yeah.
like I spend a lot of time thinking about
No.
this, so this is more top of the head stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think he's very intensely interested in maintaining the integrity of the court.
Exactly.
And so
Right.
if that means
And not
finding a
becoming
compromise
this-
that doesn't
making
set
apolitical.
a highly politicized precedent, he'll try and navigate around that.
Right.
I think
Which
that
I think is what has been trying
to whatever
do.
degree it's
Yeah.
possible. But the
Right.
thing is he still ultimately is one vote out of
Ugh.
9. So, but I
Yeah, but he's a deciding vote, because you've got Elena Kagan, you've got Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ooh, who else we got that maybe votes? The women. It's all the women.
Sotomayor. Yeah. So I'm
Actually, that's only 3.
yeah. I mean, I want to still believe that it's not a matter of conservative justices and liberal justices, that they're just justices, and they're all capable on a good
But
day
wait
to
minute.
vote the right
So
way.
are they already outnumbered then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, okay, let's just.
But
summarize.
to me, impeachment is sort of like that's just sort of the pre-show for the bigger game. Whether we're talking about the presidential election to come, we're sort of setting the stage for that. But I just sort of think that.
Well, everything I've heard is that even if they have a Democrat in there, it's like the change that you want to see is not dramatic, but still would be, at least visually, optically, emotionally, it
Yeah.
would sure be better.
Yeah. But the thing is,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be great if, in fact, some greater I'm going to start very zen now or something,
Okay.
but a greater consciousness started to, after all of this stuff with impeachment and the embarrassment of this presidency, that in fact some people sort of said, what the heck? We got to do something here. This is just nuts. Can we
Well,
just get this ship back on?
I think there are people that think that way, and I think there's a whole lot of people that just don't care.
Maybe not.
And
Maybe not.
hopefully there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
And they don't vote, but I don't know,
Yeah.
after that gun
I mean,
rally in Virginia. and all
Yeah,
that,
I mean, at some point, it's not all about left versus right, conservative versus liberal, whatever. It's
about
sort of about
decency. It's
yeah,
about,
and
coming together. It's about compromise.
Right.
It's about
the-
nonpartisanship.
and seeking
you know?
compromise. Just
Yeah,
the
that's the whole
the
point.
principle
Stop
of
fighting.
seeking compromise. Rather
But
than
you know
winning
what?
all the
I
time.
hate to
or
say it, but I know so
beating the
many
other guy.
families, including my own, where one sibling doesn't talk to another,
Yeah.
and then their parents didn't do it, and then blah blah blah. I think that's kind of common. People just hold grudges. They don't, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. We need a big
Yeah,
therapy session.
But
or something.
if the coming election in November. By the way, I think is it March 3rd will be presidential
Oh
primary.
my
It's
gosh,
coming
that's
up.
Super Tuesday.
Yeah.
We're part of Super Tuesday.
And we are. I think that may be right. Yeah.
It is. It's
yeah.
we are part of Super Tuesday.
Yeah. So it's not far
February
away.
19th, I believe, is the New Hampshire primary.
And I think there is some level of early voting in
Iowa's.
this. I
Really?
don't remember all
Early
the.
voting for primaries?
Actually, I'm not 100%
I
sure.
hope not. I
Um,
mean, come on.
Well, they're going to be having for the September primaries and things as well. So,
Alright,
but
well,
anyway, it's a coming, and
Yeah.
we'll get more details. And you can just check out the Election Commission website as well. But I'll certainly be putting up on my website more
do
details.
you know
about
that Markey
soon.
and Kennedy are going to be at our Cambridge Public Library doing a debate?
With the Democratic
You
City
saw
Committee,
that? And
we're
that's-
actually there
do you
were
know the date on? Is that on your civic
it's
calendar?
it's I believe it's the 30th. I'm not 100% sure.
That sounds right.
I don't have it on my
You don't
calendar.
have it. Okay.
Partly because I teach that night, so I won't be able to go anyway.
Is it a Thursday?
I might be. Actually, I could have that
Oh.
wrong. So let me not
Well,
go further
I
out
think
on that
it's
limb.
definitely not next week.
Right. There were
So we'll
three
let you know.
candidates. Somebody named last name Liz.
Shanlis Reardon, who
Reardon,
was the
so
whole
she
upper
dropped
crust,
out.
she dropped out.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's Kennedy versus Markey. We'll
And I
sort of
heard
say-
today, and at first I thought they were talking about the Senate, but his seat, which I guess he has to vacate in order to do this. I didn't know he did, but there's like 6 or 7 names now that are vying for his seat.
Well,
Now, what does
no.
that
The thing
mean?
is, he
Does
doesn't have to.
he
He does
doesn't?
not have to vacate his seat.
Oh, but is his term
But the
up?
thing is that if elected, since a Senate seat is a 6-year term.
Right.
I think there are some states where you could run for both.
Really?
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's some weird things. Like, for example, was it Lieberman? Remember Joseph Lieberman?
Yeah.
He was
Oh, he
actually
was the
running for his
VP
Senate seat simultaneously
As
with
the
running for
VP,
vice
but
president.
To me, that somehow seems different than Congress.
Right.
But that's
right.
interesting.
But if elected, then you
But
resign.
doesn't
right?
Joe Kennedy have to then run as a rep this November, every 2 years?
He has to
right?
make a choice. I don't think in
Ah.
Massachusetts you could run for both.
Right. So then these people lining up, I guess, are just planning
Yeah.
to maybe run.
By the way, it's still unsettled, the question of whether you could
What?
simultaneously run for city council and school committee in the city of Cambridge. I don't think that's strictly
Did
prohibited.
someone try to do that?
There have been candidates who pulled papers for both.
Oh, I think
but,
this year there was. Wasn't there somebody?
there might have been, but Richard
No, I
Harding
don't
did it in the past.
Oh, right.
But
that's
you
what it
know,
was.
but nobody's ever actually pursued
I think-
running for
yeah,
both.
I don't think he'd want.
I'm always
people
I'm
to
reminded
know
of
that.
Huey Kingfish Long in the
Oh.
great state of Louisiana. Many, many years ago, wanted to be governor, senator, and more, all out of the same state. And I
Wow.
think
He
might have been a
probably got
late.
it. Yeah.
I don't remember if he did or didn't, but
Louisiana.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there are issues. Can you hold certain seats? I think as long as there's no fundamental conflict of interest between the the jurisdiction of the two seats, that there are some things that you can do simultaneously. Like there have been state reps and city councilors,
Well, of course.
like Tim Toomey and others.
Tim Toomey,
Right,
Sandra Graham.
There was a Boston city councilor who was also a state rep, I remember. Sandra Graham was both, you know.
Yeah.
Middlesex County Clerk of Courts was Eddie Sullivan, and many years later, Michael A. Sullivan. Though with Michael's case, he actually did resign before finishing out his city council
Yeah.
term. But, you know, for a while, he was holding both
Yeah.
seats. So
I don't know. I don't know if I like that.
I would prefer people just do one.
But
you know,
then I guess, you know,
yeah.
if people vote for them, then they vote for
That's
them.
democracy. If you're
Yeah.
okay with it, you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's coming up.
Okay.
One thing I haven't mentioned this in a while, but I think it was probably worth mentioning is that there are actually several city boards and commissions
Yes, I saw
that are coming
yeah.
that have vacancies. The deadline for one of them, I forget which one was, just expired, but there are 3 other ones that are pending,
Is
and
that the ones here? Right
including a brand new one. So the latest one up is there's actually going to be a vacancy on the Cambridge Water Board.
here? Oh, yeah.
I
saw
actually
that.
applied to be on the water board
Yeah?
one time and actually got an interview, whatever. And I'm glad I wasn't selected because the person who was selected was better. He was very had particular
Committed, more
expertise, and I
time.
said,
Yeah,
can't argue that. you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
That was a good choice.
Mhm.
So that deadline is February
How
15th.
long do they serve? Is it like the
I think,
recycling, you serve
they-
3
You know,
years? or you
it
get
varies.
automatically?
You know, each of them
It
varies.
doesn't say
There are
that.
some are 3-year terms. Some of them, I think, water board may be 5-year terms, but I'm
Uh-huh.
not 100% sure. Election commission is 4-year terms, right? By the way, the Democratic seat, one of the 2 Democratic seats on the Cambridge Election Commission is up for renewal. That's
Oh.
the one Larry Ward is in, and the local city committees, party committees.
None of these are paid, right?
Only the election commission is actually paid
Why is that paid and not these others?
because of the acts of 1921 established it.
You know what I don't
to be
get
that way.
is how the Board of Zoning Appeal is not paid. To me, they have big responsibilities.
You know, I've served on a bunch of different various
Yeah.
advisory committees, and I'm still on the Central
Yeah.
Square Advisory Committee. And I
That's
was
not
on-
an advisory, that, they vote, right?
We do actually have a tiny, tiny little bit of authority, but it's still ultimately just advisory.
What, the Cambridge Board of Zoning Appeal?
No.
I'm
I was
talking about this one.
You know, the Board of Zoning Appeals has regulatory authority.
That's why, it should be
Yes.
paid.
Um,
I don't know.
you
Maybe
know,
not. Maybe that then influences the.
maybe,
Yeah.
but you know, listen, as long as there are good people willing to
I
assume the
guess.
position, then that's
Yeah.
fine. Planning board is another important regulatory authority.
Yeah, they both do a lot of
Conservation
reviewing
Commission.
of a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
Conservation Commission, yes, that's
There
important,
is-
but I
yeah.
guess the 3 to 4 hour meetings
I
on
think
Thursday
Cambridge, the
evenings,
big
yeah.
pressure has to do with development for at
Yeah.
least, and some people feel that way.
Right,
So those positions are especially
Yes.
important.
yes.
So that is that one. Board of Zoning Appeals. So the
It says
deadline.
members, are they more than one they need?
Well, I don't
Board
know
of-
how many. If there are multiple vacancies,
They end up
sometimes
with 5
there are.
and up to 7 associates, so that's,
Yeah. So then there's the January 31st, the deadline for the Board of Zoning Appeals,
Okay.
as that's
And then
coming
you
up,
have,
and there's a
temporary net zero.
net zero action
Why
plan
is it
task
temporary?
force. I think they're kind of developing a plan, and they're not meant to be a body that
Oh, I
remains
see,
in
so
place
right
forever.
now it's just a.
Yeah. So that's actually the deadline for that is, I think, is it this Friday?
It says January 24th.
Yeah, so January
Mhm.
24th. So if you have an interest in that, you might want to
Yeah.
look into that. You know, I mean, I'm going to speak as a person who's served on various boards
Mhm.
over the years.
Yeah.
Is that it is like going to school. It's an opportunity. It's kind of worth it. You learn a lot
So-
about the city,
Yeah,
and nobody should ever hesitate to express interest in a board, even if they don't have prior experience
Sometimes
or
it's good that you
expertise.
don't.
Yeah,
because you might learn.
you want
Although, yeah.
all of these boards to have some members with
Yeah.
lots of experience and expertise, but
Yeah.
it's actually good to have people who are learning and open-minded and representative, et cetera. It's not all about
There
just
has to be
getting a
some
bunch of
interest,
pros.
though, in the subject. I mean,
I agree, but you know, it's
because
actually,
that may, then you're gonna spend the time to learn more about
Yeah.
it versus just, oh, I wanna just be on a board.
you know, actually, this sort of brings to mind something I've been sort of meaning to say a thing or two about for some time, which has to
Uh-huh.
do with this whole system. We do it under the Plan A charter, where the city manager is the appointing authority, and then various city boards and commissions are appointed. City council doesn't have to approve any but two
Right.
of them. I think Housing Authority and
The paid ones. right?
maybe the health, actually, Cambridge Redevelopment Authority, perhaps. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's really it, right? And it's not about being paid.
Oh.
It's just about just how those boards were established,
I see.
right? But for most just pure city boards, it's just the manager appoints, and that's it. You know, and if the council
But
doesn't
it's on
like
the
it,
recommendation of the people that run that
it
department
sometimes
usually.
is, but
Because
not
they
always.
accept the applications first.
But see, now there you run into a little bit of a problem, because what happens if, in fact, you've got a board that is sort of has a certain momentum, a philosophy, whatever, and maybe it's a questionable philosophy, and maybe it should change, but if they have undue influence in saying to the manager, this is the person we think you should appoint, then what they're essentially doing is replicating themselves and
Okay, so
maintaining.
then what's the alternative? They still get the app.
You know,
give them without any
I
reference?
don't want to give the city council authority, because then everything would become
No,
politicized.
but that leaves it up to Louis, and then what does
I
he have
know.
to do? How does he read through
You know,
all these things?
there is a lot. It's one of the weak points, I think. I don't mean weak as in bad points, but meaning it's a vulnerability within the planning charter.
Have you seen that, though, happen on
Yeah,
these boards?
yeah.
You have?
Because the thing is, the manager's not necessarily going to sort of stick
No.
his or her hand
That's right.
into the activities of every single board. You know, you wouldn't want to have a city manager who was such a
Yeah.
micromanager to be doing
So
that.
then what's the solution? I don't see you
I don't know
coming
that
up with
there's a
this.
great solution
Okay,
other than
all right.
everybody has to act responsibly, you know?
Yeah.
But for
And treat
example,
each
so
application, yeah.
we served on the Cambridge's Recycling
Well, I was on
Advisory
the Women's
Committee.
Commission first.
You were on the Women's
And
Commission.
then I was on the
Right.
yeah.
I was on the Men's Commission, but except that it didn't exist. So
Yeah, the Men's
Anyway.
Commission, that's everything else.
everything else, oh, yeah, right, sure. Anyway, one would expect for something called a Recycling Advisory Committee that most people would be advocates
Yeah, or have an interest in it.
and have an interest in it. But the thing is, I certainly, you know, during my time on there, I always sort of tried to at least say, well, how is this going to fly on Main Street? Are people going to think this is a cool thing? Like, if we are going to be, like, for example.
No, I always would bring stuff up like that.
Oh, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. But the thing is that it is. I think it's part of the responsibility when you serve on these, even if you're an advocate with a point of view.
You have got, you're
You-
representing for the
Yeah,
city,
it's
and
not
it's
just
not just
you.
your little bubble with, oh, it's all
Exactly.
good, let's get rid
Yeah,
of this, rat,
yeah.
ban all that.
Yeah.
No, you have to look at the whole picture, what makes sense,
Right.
know your facts,
Yeah.
what's the infrastructure, can we do that, what's the cost? I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta look at all that.
That's right. So it has
It's
to
not
be
just
kind of.
aspirational,
Yes, you have
especially
to.
with the recycling, that,
Absolutely
yeah,
true.
yeah.
Absolutely true. But you know, I will make the strong suggestion that there are some advisory committees that are sort of trusted and they're you know they're just advocates. Period. You know.
yeah.
So and again, I'm all for bicycle safety, but the bike
Well, that's a
committee.
good one, the bike committee, is there anybody on there? that-
Years ago, the Cambridge Bicycle Committee, they actually started off as originally as one appointed by the mayor, and then it was sort of
Uh-huh.
turned into a regular city advisory board.
Okay,
But in the early days, it actually had in my personal opinion,
yeah.
had a better representation of different viewpoints.
Hmm.
And what happened over time is that certain particular viewpoints were sort of pushed out and not replaced, and so it became a bit monolithic in terms
Yeah.
of its point of view. I'm not trying to say, oh, I disagree with everything the bike
Yeah.
committee does, but the thing is that
Yeah.
it's not really the place where you would go to have a seasoned discussion about the pros and cons of separating bike.
Is there a committee for
lanes, for
mobility, for transportation?
All right, so this thing is
Because I think that should
so
be.
when the bike committee was established, you know, then it was a gung ho for bikes, sure, but then somewhat in response to it, not entirely, but then there was a call to have a pedestrian committee.
Which there
Well, what
is.
about us? So then they
Yeah.
appointed a pedestrian
So we have
committee.
pedestrian, we have a bicycle, do we have a scooter committee?
No, we did not.
Okay.
But the thing is, then at some point down the road, it was recognized that we needed a transit advisory committee. So
Uh-huh.
that was created by ordinance, and now there is a transit advisory
oh.
committee.
Wow.
Now, and I'm not questioning the wisdom of everybody, any of these people who are on the. I think I know some good friends who are on some of these committees, But the thing is, they kind of act as silos. Now,
Yeah.
in the last couple of years, I've noticed the pedestrian, bicycle, and transit would have a few joint meetings. And I
Yeah.
said, well, that's a movement in a good direction,
Yeah.
because the advocacy is not always compatible,
Right.
right? Now, I know this would may be a very unpopular thing to suggest, but the thing is, to whatever degree there are still people who use motor vehicles, it's not like there's a motor vehicle advisory committee.
So there should be an urban mobility committee, and maybe
Yeah, there was
incorporate
once a
some of these.
traffic board, and then that was
Well,
disbanded in the
yeah.
dead of night. I kind of would rather see a more unified
Yeah,
transportation
Yeah, and then
committee
yeah.
that
or at least they had
accepts
a
the
mandate
advice.
to meet once a month, not just when they feel like
Yeah.
it with these other committees.
But I'd want to see more of a transportation
Yeah.
coordinating committee
Yeah.
that it basically hears the advice and advocacy of all of these, but tries to balance things
Right.
out. Especially with these, as Craig Kelly, advocated again and again and again about these emerging
Yeah.
new forms of
Oh,
mobility.
absolutely. Electric bikes,
Electric bikes,
scooters,
yeah.
regular scooters.
Yeah, exactly. And
drones, I mean-
and to whatever degree, we still have the bikes are in the bike silo, and the transit in the transit silo, and the pedestrians in the
Well,
pedestrian
I
silo.
do know someone who is an avid bicyclist that's on the pedestrian committee. So,
So,
maybe
yes,
that's,
as do I. Yeah.
It's probably the same person.
Yes, it is. It is. I'm sure. Right. But I think it is a bit of a weakness. Now, the greatest weakness for me, though, is this: has to do with how this dovetails into the city council. So, for example, and again, I'm not saying that the bicycle plan is good, bad, or anything, but they are
Yeah.
kind of revising it to create a 2020 bicycle plan. And to the best of my knowledge, it's basically the people on the bicycle committee, all of whom are gung-ho advocates for a point of view, who are going to come out with their latest version of a bicycle plan. And I'm pretty much going to guarantee you the city council is just going to rubber stamp it, no questions asked. So that's a bit of a problem for me,
Yeah.
because I think the buck should stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And if there are some questions, serious questions to be asked about the relative wisdom of certain infrastructure decisions, then you would like to believe that a city council would do that, but they're not going to.
Well, but wait a minute. If they're presented with a bicycle plan, they then have to have hearings with the transportation committee, and you're going to have people come out that are going to speak on that. Public comment.
You want to believe that that's how it's going to work.
Well, isn't
but
that usually the way? If they're presented with
Well,
a plan, they'd have to have go to a committee?
I believe when they passed an ordinance that basically said, that laid out the procedure for how road projects would be rolled out in the future. And it pretty much mandates they must follow not
that's
only
true.
the
You're
existing
right.
bicycle
Every time
plan
you do something, it
or
has to be-
future iterates of it. So in other words,
Yeah.
basically, so if the Cambridge Bicycle Committee decides, well, this is what we think the great wisdom is, and then that makes it into the plan, then the ordinance says that's the law. And, somehow,
Yeah.
especially with other, maybe we should just trust them. Everything they do is wonderful. But, just the fact that we've had controversies about this suggests that maybe
Yeah.
that's not the best course of action.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm a big fan of Plenty. I am the junkyard dog of Plenty. I will defend it. But there are two aspects of it that I have been a kind of a growing concern about. One is this issue about at what point is an advocacy board basically become a policy making board?
Is that all part of Plan E government? Other cities don't have these kind of committees?
We have the appointing authority, which
Oh,
in
okay.
city manager form of government is the city manager.
I
The
see.
mayoral form of government would be the mayor,
Okay.
right? And a lot of times, so if you don't like it, you elect another mayor or something, right? But it's not like you're going to vote in the new bike committee or
Yeah.
impeach the head of the pedestrian committee because you
I
don't
see
like
what
the
you're
size
saying.
of the
Okay.
width of the crosswalk
Yeah.
or something.
All right.
There's just no real mechanism for doing that. So where do you draw the line between advocacy and representativeness? And I just think it's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll actually say has to do with proportional representation. And again, nobody should ever expect me to be arguing against proportional representation. I'm not going to. But the thing is that, this last election cycle, when I was sort of watching various new political organizations form and having influence and whatever, and unless that really establishes itself and becomes in a lot more buy-in from more people, basically we have a situation now where advocacy groups are basically having a little excess influence, I think, in the elections, and that's a bit of a problem. The other thing about proportional representation is, I keep raising that question. I say, proportional to what? People sort of pat themselves on the back and say, "Oh, we do everything so wonderfully here because we're good old folks at Cambridge." But what do we? Do we strive to be proportional to backgrounds, to ethnicity, to religious beliefs, to political?
All you have to do is get a certain quota of
positions?
votes, and you're in.
I know it.
So all
I
you
know
have to
it.
do is court those
I
1,800,
know.
2,000 votes. It's not a lot.
But
in the city,
that phrase proportional representation runs off the tongue pretty easily for some
But
folks.
you know what? I think some people
for the
take it
most
seriously, and they
I
do
agree.
try to
I agree.
represent all parts of.
I agree. I think by and large it
Yeah,
works
it works.
okay, and it's, I would
Better than
argue,
some
better than
other
most
places,
every
yeah.
other election
Yeah.
system, but not necessarily perfect.
Yeah.
And maybe we could do a little bit
There-
better. I
don't-
always
don't know
felt.
how, but-
Well, I honestly, even though I sometimes was at odds with them, the days of the Cambridge Civic
Yeah.
Association, even if there was no formal other side to that, but sometimes there was, it at least helped to sort of make clear, you could choose some sides, and it wasn't all based on a single issue.
Well, that's true. We have to get away from that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So,
All right. So
yeah.
hopefully that will.
and honestly, I don't know
Yeah.
how people make decisions about school committee. So,
Oh,
so
well. If
Anyway.
you have kids in the school.
that's basically it. So,
Okay. See you next
anyway,
week.
see you next week on Cambridge Inside Out.